Hey guys, so I realized yesterday kind of had an issue just going through our spreadsheet. I know there's a lot of confusion, so I figured today I'd just record a video that you guys can kind of watch and pause as you go along. It'll be a little bit easier for all of us. So we're basically going to be doing the same thing as yesterday. I'm just going to start all over just so we don't miss any steps. So again, what we're doing today is we're focusing on simple and compound interest using a spreadsheet. So what we're practicing is we're practicing trying to create a spreadsheet that can do all this math for us. So actually, very first thing I want to do is I'm going to press Control A. It's going to highlight everything, right? So Control A highlights your entire spreadsheet. What we're going to do is we're going over to this button. It's called text wrapping. We're going to change this option to the wrap button. Kind of looks like a sideways U-turn. So what that does is, let's say that we're starting to type. Hi, my name is Mr. Watkins, and it goes outside the box. When you click outside, it just wraps around, and so it'll start expanding vertically instead of horizontally. So obviously I don't want to have this yet. So the very first thing I want to do is I'm going to merge these cells, meaning I'm going to make this all one cell. So again, I'm going to click A1, drag it all the way over to D1. I'm going to find my merge button. My merge button is over here, merge cells. Go ahead and click on that. Now you can see from A1 to D1, it's all one cell now. So here I can start typing. So first thing I'm going to type is $5,000, 11% APR compounded annually. What this means is that we are going to start with $5,000. We're going to get a really awesome 11% interest rate, which you're probably never ever going to get, unfortunately. Maybe on a credit card, which is not great for you. And what this is going to do is going to be compounded once a year at the end of the year. Right? So let's do a little bit of formatting. So click here. We want to put this in the center of our cell. So you can find your alignment button over here. We're going to choose our centering button. Okay. Then now start to fill out the rest of our table. Okay, so I'm going to show what year we'll have, our principal, which again is how much money we're starting with at the beginning of our year, how much interest we've collected, and our account balance at the end of the year. So you can see, because we did that text wrapping over here, this expands, pushes it down a little bit. Okay, a couple more things we're going to add before we start putting in our numbers. In F1, we're going to go ahead and merge a few of these cells again. So we're going to go from F1 to I1. Again, so we've selected our cells, about 4 of them. Go ahead and find our merge button. Go ahead and click that. And then here, we're going to type in final answers. So again, let's go ahead and align this in the middle. Cool. Now, let's go ahead and fill out the rest of this. So final account balance is how much we're going to end up with at the end. Total amount that you deposited. Again, it wraps that down to the bottom. And the amount of interest earned. Okay, so now we have our spreadsheet set up for us. So now we can start adding some of our numbers. So again, we're going to look at this over a 10-year period. So let's go ahead and start typing a few of our numbers. Again, we don't need to go that far down. We have 1, 2, 3. So we already have a pattern. Obviously, we know that it's going to go, on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the computer knows that too. And so in order to tell it to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight these 3 cells. So again, click, somewhere in this box where the 1 is. Drag it down so all 3 of these are highlighted. You see we have a little blue square here. If you click that, go ahead and drag it all the way down till we get to 10. So all the way to A12. So these are representing our years, year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. All the way down. Okay, now our principal. We are starting off with $5,000. Anytime you're doing an investment, obviously the more that you start with, the more you're going to make in the end. So, when you're saving money, it's one thing to put in the bank, but if you really want to see your money grow, you may want to invest it in some sort of stock or some sort of CD, which again we'll kind of talk about a little bit later. Okay, our interest. So our interest is going to be based on the interest rate that we're given here. So again, the main thing that we're going to do is first we need to figure out how to express this interest rate as a decimal. So we're given a percentage. So again, to make it a decimal, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to divide this by 100. So 11 divided by 100 gives us 0.11. And then to express this as an equation, what you're going to want to do is click on cell C3 up here. We're going to type equals, so C3 is going to equal this number over here. So we're not going to type in 5,000. What we're going to type in is we're going to type in the cell number, which is B3. So B3. You see now that we have B3 in there, our cell B3 is now highlighted. Okay, and so what we're going to want to do is we're going to multiply this number. So the multiplying number is this little asterisk sign. I believe it's on your computers, it will be Shift 8. And again, we found our decimal version of our percent. So 11% as a decimal is 0.11. Then once you have that typed in, just go ahead and press enter. Gives us our number, 550. And if you use your calculator and you multiply 5,000 by 0.11, you should get 550, or you will get 550. If you don't, probably made a mistake somewhere along the way. Okay, now account balance. Account balance is very easy to calculate. All it is it's your principal plus your interest. So again, here we're not going to just do it ourselves. We're not going to do the hard work on our own. We're going to make the computer do it. So we want this to do is we're going to click on the cell D3. Again, start with the equal sign. So D3 is going to equal these two numbers added together. So we're not going to put the numbers, we're going to put the names of the cells. So B3, again, you'll see that cell will be highlighted, and this is an addition problem. So plus C3. Okay, once you have that, you should see both B3 and C3 highlighted. Go ahead and click enter. Great, 5,550. So again, if you just do it in your head, you'll notice that that is the correct answer. So we see up here B3 plus C3, that is what we get. So year 2, the principal we're starting out with is the account balance from our previous year. So again, think about this as how much money we end up with on December 31st. So January 1st, how much are we starting with? Same number, because it compounds at the year's end. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're not going to type in 5,550. What we're going to do is we're going to type in D3, because our starting principal for year 2 is our account balance at the end of year 1. So we're just going to click that over here. So now you notice if we click on any of these cells besides B3, we don't get a number, we get a formula. So they all equal something. The only one that doesn't have a formula is the very first cell that we created with our numbers. So now that we have our formula, what we're going to do is we're actually going to copy this formula the whole way down. So again, we're going to click on C3, find your little blue square. We're going to click this and drag it all the way to year 10. So you'll notice that we get a lot of zeros. The reason why that is because, again, what this is calculating now is it's calculating B5 times 0.11. And since B5 is blank, it's empty, it's just 0. So we have 0 times 0.11, which is not giving us anything. So here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click here, we have our formula. We're going to find this little blue box, drag it all the way down. So again, we're still going to get a lot of zeros, because right now we have B5 plus C5 equals D5. In this case, 0 plus 0. So in order to make this work, what we're going to do is we need to drag this all the way down. Okay. So now our formula is really working, because now we have the numbers to work with. So you can see that as we move down the line, the numbers up here are changing. So D9, D10, D11. So you see our formula, the format stays the same, but it obviously shifts down to the numbers that we want. So you can start to see that we have all the numbers that we want. So you notice that it's a little ugly right now. I mean, all the numbers are, several decimal places, which isn't really relevant when you're dealing with money, because when you're dealing with money, it only goes to 2 decimal places. We have cents, and again, cents just goes to 2 decimal places. So what Excel or what Google Sheets does that's pretty cool is it allows us to format this really easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight this whole section, basically this whole section that we're going to be dealing with numbers that are money. So from about B3 all the way down to B12, all the way over to H12. Okay, so we're going to highlight this whole section. So not the years and not any of the words, just this section here. Okay, so have it highlighted, and up here you'll find a little $sign. Go ahead and click on that. Now this will automatically convert all our numbers to currency, and you'll notice that all of the decimals are rounded up to 2 decimal places. Okay, so now let's figure this out. So after 10 years, what is your final account balance? So if you look here, account balance, year 10, we have $14,197.10. So again, we can go ahead and type that in here, but since we're practicing just basic spreadsheets techniques, what we're going to do is we're going to just find the number of the cell and type that in. So under F3, remember, always start with the equal sign. And we type in D12. Just gives us our number. Okay, total amount of money that you deposited. So this is going all the way back to the very beginning, the very first number that we started with on year 1. How much money did we start with in the bank? So again here, oops, we could type in 5,000, but again, we're just going to use the formula, so this is going to be equaling. And this is our very first cell that we typed in, so B3. Cool. Now, the amount of interest earned. So this is the difference between these two numbers, because this is how much we started with. After 10 years with 11% interest compounded annually, we got up to $14,197. So almost 3 times as much as what we started with after 10 years. If that doesn't make you want to save money with a good interest rate, I don't know what would. So again, to find out the total amount of interest that we earned, all we need to do is we need to subtract these two numbers. So again, you could do this on a piece of paper, you can do this with a calculator, but nah, today we're going to do this with our spreadsheet. So we're going to start with, again, what sign? The equal sign. Okay, so find the two cells that we're going to be subtracting. So we're starting with F3, which is how much we ended up with, minus G3, which is how much we started with. Press enter. This is the total amount of interest we earned over a 10-year period. So you essentially, again, you basically tripled your investment. So it's the amount of interest in and of itself is about double what you originally put in. Okay, so what we're going to do is we just did this using simple compound interest, right? So it wasn't very difficult. The formula is obviously very simple. So we're going to step it up a notch. So for some of you guys, we've already learned about compounding quarterly, semi-annually, etc. So again, we're going to raise the bar a little bit. So we're going to do down here, we're going to start another table. So we're going to use the same labels up here. So let's go ahead and highlight from about A2 all the way to I2. Okay, so highlight that, and we're going to copy it. So on your computers, you can press Control C. You see it'll get a little outline. Let's go down to about A14. We're going to paste that. So Control V. So again, we're going to all the same labels up here. So here, again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do up to year 10. So we got our pattern. Go ahead and pull this down. So I'm going to go a little faster now just because I feel like we've got some of the basics down. So again, in this sense, we're going to start with $5,000. So the one change that I do have to make to our table, which I haven't talked about yet, is we're not going to be compounding this annually. We're going to be compounding this semi-annually. So for those of you guys who remember, semi-annually means it's being compounded twice a year. So semi-annual is something that happens twice a year. Think of the Puyallup Fair. You have it in the spring, you have it in the fall. It happens twice a year. Okay. So our formula is definitely going to look a lot different now since we're compounding it twice in a year. It's going to be a little more complex, but I think you guys can hold on. You guys can manage it. So our interest. So we're not just multiplying this number by 11% anymore. It's a little more complicated than that. So we are not going to look at the interest yet. We're going to go straight over to the account balance, right? So go ahead, find D16. Right, so it's really helpful if you're making sure that you're putting all your different information in the same cells or boxes that I am. Otherwise, it may get a little confusing since I'm using these cell numbers so often. So again, we're going to D16. So again, with every formula, we always start with the equal sign. What we're going to find is we're going to find our starting principal, so B16. And then we're going to use the formula that we learned in class. Again, not all of you guys had a chance to learn it, so if you are getting stuck, please just ask me. I will come over and I'll help you when you get to this part in the video. Okay, so starting with B16, which is our principal. And then in our formula, it always starts with a 1 plus whatever your rate is as a decimal. So in this case, our decimal is still 0.11. Sorry, 0.11. And then our rate is divided by n, or the amount of times it's being compounded in a year. In this case, since it's semi-annual, it's 2. So 0.11 divided by 2. Put that in parentheses. So we want to make sure this is all put in parentheses because, again, the computer calculates these numbers through PEMDAS. So you just want to make sure that you are using the parentheses correctly. So we're not done with our formula yet. So we started with our principal, and then 1 plus our rate divided by 2, because it's semi-annual. And then now, this is all to the power of NT. So in this case, we're going to, again, put our parentheses. 2, because remember, our amount of times it's being compounded is twice. 2 times 1. Because we're only looking at one time period right now. We're in year 1. So let's go ahead and press enter. So if you did that correctly, you'll end up with 5,565.125. If you did not get that number, make sure the formula that you entered is the same as the formula up here. So again, you should be in D16. So right now, C16 should be blank. So to find the amount of interest that we gained, It's going to be fairly simple, similar to what we did up here. The interest gained is simply our account balance at the end of the year subtracted by the starting principal we had. So it's kind of going backwards a little bit. So here, our interest is going to be our account balance that we just found out. So that's the information D16. And we're going to subtract that by the information we found in B16. All right. That gives us our interest. So again, at the beginning of year 2, we already had it compounded semi-annually. So this number is going to be our account balance at the end of year 1. So we're getting this information from cell D16. So just like we did in our first table, we dragged our formulas down. Just go ahead, click on them, click on this little blue square, drag them down. Click here, drag it down, and we'll see if it works. Yeah. Okay. So just like we did up there, we're getting all these crazy decimal places. Obviously, money does not work like that. That looks super messy. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to highlight this whole area. All right. So again, from about B16 all the way down to B25, all the way over to I25. So let's find our little currency button. There we go. Looks a lot cleaner now. So here, final account balance at the end of 10 years, or year 10. Okay, just type that in. See, it's D25. Cool. Total amount we started with. Got that information from B16. And the amount of interest earned. So again, just like we did up here, it's going to be these two cells, or this cell, F16 minus G16. There we go. So I actually want to add just one more label over here. So this is to kind of wrap this up. How much more interest have you earned? So this is comparing these two spreadsheets, here and here. So let's take a look. So basically we're comparing these two numbers. So obviously just by looking at it we can figure out which one we got more from, the one that was compounded semi-annually. Because again, you're getting more interest because we're doing it twice a year instead of just once a year. So to figure out this number, keep doing that. We're going to do equal sign H16 minus H3. So if you did everything correctly up to this point, you should end up with $391.68 in this final cell, I16. So in cell I16, again, if you got 391.68, you did this correctly, and you can move on to the next step. So to do the next step, please come find me. I will explain to you what to do next. You'll be able to play with this a lot more, put in your own numbers. And since we already have all our formulas in here, you'll begin to see the numbers themselves will begin to change. So for example, if you take this 5,000 number, and let's say we started with 7,000. What? Look how crazy those numbers changed. Let's say if you aren't a big spender, you're not great at saving money. So say you just started with $100. You can see, wow, our savings went way down. So over 10 years, we already gained $191. So still our investment, about tripled. It's about the same ratio. So again, the more money that you start with, more money you're going to make. So you can play around with it. We'll play around with some more of the formulas, make this a little more applicable to real life experiences. So the last thing I want to show you guys before we sign off is just to make this a little easier to read. If you highlight these sections, so we can just do a little formatting. So you can make this whole section bold. We can give it a little bit of color. So this just makes stuff easier to read, and I know for me that's something that I always emphasize. If you have all these different words and all these different numbers, you want to make this as easy to read as possible. So, if you got up to this point, congratulations. Again, if you got stuck anywhere along the way, please just raise your hand and I will come help you. And if you're not doing this in the class with me, then please just um, shoot me an email and I will do my best to respond. Okay? You guys have a good rest of your day. Make sure you listen to your teacher.